All right. We now rise back from recess. Yesterday, during our committee meeting, we were discussing House Bill 2395 HS1, which is to reappeal and reenact Public Law 2312 and for other purposes. In other words, this is the line of credit from MPOT to fund EDA projects. We heard from MPOT Board of Trustees Chairman, Mr. Long, Secretary of Finance, Ms. Tracy Narita, and CIP Administrator, Ms. Liz Balahaja. We did invite Secretary of Finance to come back today after reviewing some amendments that members had proposed to see if it was a version that the administration would accept and would work for the way the payment processing is going to take place. Since then, while the council and LA have been working on an updated draft, there were additional amendments that were proposed, and that is something that we would like to bring to the parties to see if these amendments would allow for both parties to move forward. In light of the additional amendments, I did notify MPOT. I know they had plans to come and attend today's committee meeting in hopes of getting a finished product. However, I advise them that we may go into recess because of these additional amendments that are being proposed to give both parties additional time to review the amendments. And so I know, and maybe that's why we don't have anyone from MPOT here. However, that is still the intention, is that we will adjourn since it's a weekend, and we'll come back next week after giving both parties enough time to review the most recent version of the House Bill 2395. And so with that, I invite Secretary of Finance, Tracy Narita, and CIP Administrator, Ms. Balahaja, to join us in the chamber for questions that members may have or concerns that these parties may want to bring to the committee. And while they're making their way up, these additional amendments to the bill includes language. It includes the recommendation made by the chairman of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Long, and that we include language on the municipalities. However, since then, the additional proposed amendments include 702 CIP annual projects, and that any reimbursements from these projects will be remitted to the MPOT to cover for any revolving line of credit used to fund the upfront cost of these CIP projects. And then the same mechanism to fund EDA projects and to pay back EDA projects will also be used for 702 projects. And so with that, before I hand the floor over to Secretary, I would like to ask if the administration has had time to review these new amendments and if you're ready to comment on these additional amendments. And so at this time, I recognize Secretary Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to state for the record that we received this amended draft about less than an hour ago. And so in the brief review of the amendments made, we'd just like to ask some clarifying questions. It seems like the municipalities of Rhoda and Tinian CIP projects with 702 funding will be covered by the $15 million line of credit. Is there an expectation that the municipalities will enter into a separate agreement with MPLT?
Can you repeat your question? Is there an expectation?
Is there an expectation for the municipalities to enter into a separate agreement with MPLT for 702 projects?
It would be the same expectations we have for the EDA projects with the same mechanisms that are being placed. Whether it be you as a custodian of funds or CIP, the CIP office for projects funded by the 702, if that makes sense.
Just to further clarify, the discussions that we've been having with MPLT are specific to EDA funded projects. Before the approval of the agreement, the projects that were part of the proposal required a lot of additional supporting documents. And so with the additional language in place to specifically mention the municipality 702, I was just wanting to clarify whether there was an intention for the municipalities to have a separate agreement other than the one we are working on right now for the EDA projects, because we're trying to push that agreement forward to be approved. MPLT has asked for multiple supporting documents from OPD in order for us to get to an agreement. And so I would just like to clarify
This would be
whether
under
these,
this would be under the same agreement.
so it would just probably be an amended agreement with
Yes.
MPLT until such time there's projects for the municipalities. Okay,
Correct.
thank you. So do you have any concerns about? I think you can ask.
Recognize Ms. Balahaja.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of this body. Under the 702 covenant funding, our annual budget always depends on the performance of the CNMI and inclusive of all, procurement, audits. So it will always differ every year. Unlike EDA, 702 covenant funding, once we get a budget, any project for the islands of Tinian, Saipan, and Rhoda could be charged against the grant. So there's really no need to secure any other funding, to move on with the project. It basically, it's on its own merit that the grant is there. And so whenever we do have a project under the 702 covenant funding, we execute a contract with a vendor, a contractor, and we charge it to that grant award. Thank you.
Thank you. Has there been any delay with projects moving forward because of funding issues from CIP?
If you're talking about the 702, there are project delays, and it's mostly due to the NEPA process.
But in terms of the payments made to vendors?
I am not aware of that. We have been, very diligent in paying our contractors based on their performance on progress payments.
And is what you're saying that when these are charged against a grant, there was never a time where you don't anticipate any time where payments will be made up front on the same reasons why EDA is requiring payments up front?
Not ever since I've been at the CIP program. Yeah. So what usually happens is we charge against the grant. When a contractor submits a payment application, we process the payment, we process it to the finance. It sends over for drawdown to Insular Affairs. Within 3 to 5 days, it's probably in the bank already, and payment can be made to the vendor.
Thank you. Going back to Secretary of Finance, prior to this new amendment, are there any concerns that administration has with the language that was brought up yesterday?
On the version that was provided yesterday, I don't see anything that would be problematic other than maybe some grant management, just because with the EDA grants, it is expected by the grantor for a grantee to find financing to fund the project because of the reimbursement method. And so thus the grantor covers the interest charges. As for CIP, as Director Liz mentioned, the mechanism of getting the drawdown does not require the proof of payment and the advance payment. And so there really was, at least in our time, I haven't seen a requirement for interest to be covered under the grant or ever be reprogrammed from project construction to a financing cost. So that is the only concern in terms of the grant management. But in the authorization, it's not problematic.
If say, because this is a 7-year line of credit, and later on down the line, we can't anticipate any changes that may occur, but by including language in regards to 702 and having that security, will there be any issues in regards to including the new language into this agreement to ensure that future project costs are addressed and that we can seek reimbursement through other means, or if that may be the process in the future? Would there be an issue of having this 702 language as part of that agreement?
Mr. Chair, yeah, like you said, we don't know what the future holds. I mean, whether we're going to encounter, typically federal grants are unreimbursable, but we've been very lucky with FEMA and with the 702 covenant funding, that they allow us to charge against the grant. If that is the case, I don't know what OIA would, what we would need from them to guarantee such annual budget, because just like an annual budget, if there's a budget, then we get our allocation for the entire CNMI, and if there's no budget, then we won't get our annual budget.
No, but my question for Secretary is, if this language was included, just for the sake of security, is this something that the administration can support? Even though it may never be used, can this be factored into this agreement, where whether if there may be interest accrued from borrowing for CIP projects, can the interest distribution pay for whatever interest that may accrue from that borrowing from that line of credit?
I think the version that we have now, it's not problematic. Again, it just goes down to the grant management, which then I would expect the municipalities to work closely with OPD in managing the grant, reprogramming what's necessary to cover any interest charges that they could expect. I would like to confirm with MPLT that this would not delay the agreement between the CNMI and MPLT. But as the language stands right now, it's not problematic for me. I think it's okay that it's authorizing in, like you said, in the future, should it be needed. And I believe it would just be the agreement between the CNMI and MPLT on the terms, and then also the process, which we expect it should mirror the EDA grant process. But again, we don't have an agreement in place with final terms with MPLT, so I can't comment as to that agreement and what that entails. I just hope that the additional language regarding 702 projects, there may be some ongoing 702 projects, and I hope that doesn't delay the use of the MPLT line of credit for the EDA projects, because we're including 702 projects now as part of the package. If it were separate, two separate agreements, but same line of credit, maybe that's something that could be considered, just not to delay the EDA project. So that would be my only concern. But as far as the authorizing statute to allow the municipalities to use the line of credit for 702 funding, I don't see an issue with that. It would just require a lot more work after that to make sure that it's acceptable to both the CNMI and MPLT.
Recognize, Liz.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and I think the other issue that we need to think about is that under this EDA, we have conferred with EDA, and they have agreed to pay the interest. Now, if it's the 702 covenant funding, we would also have to go to Office of Insular Affairs and say, hey, what if there's interest incurred? I mean, can we pay it out of the grant? And I think, what we need to realize is that we really don't get a lot of money in an annual budget from OIA for projects. So if we need to incorporate the interest also in there, it's something that we need to also get permission from OIA, whether it's going to be paid for, or is the CNMI government general fund going to pay for it?
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And, that's something that we would have to possibly include in this legislation, right? That in the event OIA will not allow for any interest to be, included in the grant, then we can use the collateral to address that. And so I hope that that's something that we can factor into this legislation, if not already. In any case, it may seem that we may have this one legislation that authorizes a line of credit, but we may have to do two separate agreements. And so we'll try to address that. And so in moving forward, we'll probably, or we'll definitely adjourn today and then come back. We'll give MPOT until Tuesday morning to come up with a comment, and then we'll come back in the afternoon to address additional comments. And so we would also offer you, Secretary, and Liz, if you would like to provide additional comments that may have been missed today in order to address this new version. Like, I apologize for the last minute notice. It was a working draft up until this morning. And so we'll offer you the same time to prepare any comments if this may become problematic, or how we can address any concerns that was brought up today. But before we dismiss our participants, any comments from the members? Dave, and do you have any comments in particular to the legislation?
Chair, I just want to ask, let's say, Liz, a very simple question. With the 702 funding, would it be possible to use those funding as a collateral security to float a bond to fast track all future projects on these islands, especially for Saipan, Tinian, and Broda?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, you could, I mean, but, you know, like I said, it's an annual allocation, so we might have to seek, maybe to consult with the OIA on this one.
Recognize Senator King Neighbor.
Thank you, and thank you guys again for being here today. I know we spoke yesterday regarding the drawdown schedule, and there was mention made of it being furnished to the legislature, but we never got a copy. So if we could get a copy of that for what you guys anticipate to draw down, which projects, when, how much, and the rationale behind that is we can take that information and work backwards and assess how much money interest, right? According to Mr. Long, Chairman Long, it's $150 per million per day. So if we can take your drawdown sheet and then do the math, I think we can kind of get a ballpark figure of what we're kind of looking to spend. That was kind of my, and also just to understand also your guys' plan on how you guys are going to proceed forward with this line of credit.
Thank you, Senator King Neighbor. Recognize council.
Yeah, I think I posed this question and I was hoping that Mariano would be here yesterday. Is that I know there's already approved EDA projects. Is that it? Or within the 7-year period, there may be other new EDA approved projects?
Thanks for that question. I believe there's always an opportunity to apply for EDA grants. They are competitive. When the regional director, Ms. Sheba Whitley Pearson, was here last year, and in discussing the grants, these disaster grants that were approved or appropriated for the CNMI, she mentioned that it was highly unusual. This was something that was tied to the disaster grant, probably tied to COVID. And so her normal expectation of EDA grants awarded to states are around, she mentioned, around 2 to 3 million to a state for certain projects. And the projects that she mentioned that they typically award are like the installation of a street light that would facilitate commerce, the installation of signage, installation of certain things that would promote commerce. Now, for the CNMI being awarded for buildings and infrastructure, that was something that was unprecedented for EDA, especially for the amount that was awarded to a single state. And so I think that was helpful in managing the CNMI's expectation of future EDA projects. But again, she did remind us there is an opportunity to continue to compete against the other states for these grants that are and will be smaller. So the opportunity is always there. However, maybe not at the same amount. Right?
Thank you. Any other questions from members joining online? There's none. Again, thank you both for your presence here today. Again, take this as my formal request for comments by no later than Monday after end of business day. Oh, sorry.
Should we be expecting any newer version between now and Tuesday?
Other than what you received
Other than what we
an
received
hour
today.
ago?
Yeah.
No, that would be the final working draft.
Pretty minor, maybe. Thinking meeting this year.
Okay. Just a minor technical change to just moving the terms around, but the intent is still be there, but we'll provide a final draft no later than or by today, and then we'll give you until 11:30 Tuesday, and then we'll have our meeting Tuesday afternoon. Yes. All right. Again, thank you both for your presence. You are hereby excused from today's committee meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Any any additional discussion from the members? If there's none, we move down to miscellaneous, and again, as stated, we will schedule a committee meeting for Tuesday, possibly around 1 p.m. To allow all parties to prepare their comments on the amended version of the bill. And so with that, we now move on to adjournment. Can I get a motion?
Motion to adjourn, subject to the call of the chair.
Thank you. Can I get a second from those viewing online?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. This meeting is hereby adjourned at 3:21 p.m.